The Christmas story is so familiar, we hardly even need to read it because we all know the details. You know, and as Pastor Alex was talking about Christmas a little bit earlier and how wonderful the white snow is out. Now, Pastor Alex, did it snow on the first Christmas?
Feet, isn't it? No, it does not.
Well, you know, snow at Christmas is something that we've come to put in the story. But I've got some questions for you about the Christmas story just to kind of help you recall it. First of all, where was Joseph from? Was he from Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Nazareth, Egypt, Minnesota? Or none of the above? Where was he from? Nazareth. Well, you know, actually Bethlehem is where his family was from. That's why they had to return to Bethlehem for the census, was because Joseph was from the house and line of David, and so they returned to Bethlehem. But also Jerusalem was the holy city. Nazareth was the place where Jesus grew up as a boy. Egypt was the place where they fled to when Herod declared that the babies under 2 years of age should be put to death. Here's another one. How did Mary and Joseph travel to Bethlehem? By camel, donkey, walked, a Model T, or who knows? A Model T. Okay, no, that wasn't that. But what do you think? Well, we see a donkey in so many of the pictures and stories, but the Bible doesn't tell us. You know, it's people using their sanctified imagination of how people might have traveled in that day, but the Bible really doesn't tell us how they got to Bethlehem. Well, one more. How many wise men came to see Jesus? How many? 3. We just sang a song about we 3 kings, but again, that's a part of our imagination because the Bible doesn't tell us how many came to see Jesus, but what we do know is that they brought 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. You know, the Gospels tell the story of Jesus. The Gospels are the first 4 books of the New Testament: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And the birth of Jesus is in 2 of those Gospels. You can find it at the end of Matthew chapter 1 and also in Luke chapter 2. And so I would encourage you to take some time in the next few days and just to sit down and read those stories again. You know, we think we know all the details, and yet sometimes some of those details are of our own making or imagination. Well, this morning I want to read to you the Christmas story as it's found in Luke chapter 2. And so I would invite you to notice how Mary and Joseph are kind of going about their routine tasks when their routine tasks and responsibilities, and God breaks in. Luke chapter 2, beginning with verse 1. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria, and everyone went to his own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and the line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. You know, whenever we hear the Christmas story read, it often begins with those words from Luke chapter 2 that talks about Caesar Augustus, that he had issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. Well, who was Caesar Augustus? You know, Caesar Augustus was the nephew of Julius Caesar. Caesar Augustus was one of the most powerful Caesars to rule the Roman world. It was said that when Caesar Augustus came into power, that Rome was built with bricks, but when he finished his reign, Rome was filled with marble. He was responsible for for building streets and roads, and people believed that he was God. So when he died, they mourned his death, but yet they believed that he lived on because he was immortal. This one who was considered by so many to be God had decreed that a census should be taken. And since Caesar Augustus ordered it, Mary and Joseph had to travel to the city of Bethlehem, where they found their roots. Some of you are already drifting off saying, so what? So what does it really matter about Caesar Augustus? Who cares about this guy? But listen, because of the decree of a man who thought he was God, who thought he had everything under control, because of his decree, Mary and Joseph found themselves traveling to Bethlehem. And that they were there in Bethlehem when it was time for Jesus to be born. God used a man who was full of himself to accomplish his purposes. To fulfill the words of the prophet from Micah chapter 5, verse 2. But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will rule over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. There was a man named Caesar Augustus who believed that he was God, and his life intercepted in time and space when God became man. Caesar Augustus thought he was calling the shots, but in him calling the shots, he actually did things that accomplished and fulfilled God's purposes and God's plan. If Caesar Augustus had not called for a census to be taken, then Mary and Joseph would have probably been in Nazareth when it came time for Jesus' birth. But that was not God's plan. Who really determines history? Is it the Caesars, the kings, the presidents of different countries? I believe that God is the ruler of all things. And even the rulers of human history may unwittingly be accomplishing God's purposes. There are many examples when decisions made by men and women actually accomplish God's purposes. I've said this all to make this point. I'm concerned about what's going on in our nation's capital. I'm concerned about the way Congress is going about their business. Now, I'm not saying anything about legislation that's before them. I'm talking about the way that they seem to be doing their work. But as much as I'm concerned about the way they're doing their work, God can still be at work in the midst of when men and women think that they are powerful and taking life into their own hands. God can still be at work. I'm concerned about the instability in the Middle East, a nuclear Iran and the threats against Israel. There are no easy answers, and I'm not sure what all the right answers are, but God has a history of accomplishing His purposes through men and women. Some who are willing and others who don't even know that they're being used by God. Despite what Barack Obama, Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, or Mahmoud Ahmadinejad think, no matter what the Palestinians or the Israelis may think, God is in control. And ultimately His purposes and His plan is going to come to be.